Okay, so in this next problem, the way that we're going to find this common ratio, well, there are a couple of ways that we could actually find it. And let's just start using 1/10 and dividing by 1/100th here. So 1/10, we have 1/10 divided by 1/100th. So 1/100th here. And the way that we divide fractions is we actually pull that number out of the denominator, flip the reciprocal, and multiply. So what I'm talking about here is we're actually going to pull this information out, flip the reciprocal, and multiply it by 1/10. So down here I have 1/10, I'm rewriting 1/10 here, times this information I'm going to pull out, 1/100th I'm pulling out, and I'm actually going to flip the reciprocal. So instead of 1/100th, you have 100 over 1. Now my next step here, what I could do is I could actually multiply straight across on top, straight across on bottom, or I could just simply cross simplify before I do any of that math. So 10 goes into both of these values. I'm left with 1 and 10. Now when I multiply straight across, I have 1 times 10 is 10, 1 times 10 is 10, and 1 times 1 is 1, so I have 10 over 1 here, or simply 10. So I have 10 as the ratio for this first setup here. Okay, now I'm going to change colors, and let's work on this next one. This next one I'm going to think of it as, well, I have 1, and I'm going to divide it by 1/10 here, so over 1/10. So 1/10, okay. And I'm going to change colors. 1/10, I'm going to pull this out of the denominator, flip the reciprocal, and multiply it by 1. So 1, this top number 1, as a fraction is 1 over 1. And I'm going to multiply it. I'm going to pull this number out of the denominator now, 1/10, flip the reciprocal, which is 10, and multiply it by, well, the reciprocal is 10 over 1, and I'm going to multiply both fractions now. So I'm going to change colors again. I'm going to multiply straight across on top, straight across on bottom, and I'm left with 10 over 1, or simply 10. And I can box this up. So it looks like I have a common ratio. The ratio is remaining constant throughout, and let's just see if it holds true on this last one here. Yeah, this last one is actually the easiest to work through. So if we think about it, I have 10 here over 1, 10 over 1, which, so my ratio 10 over 1 actually just simplifies into 10, and I can box that information up. I have a common ratio of 10, and that's the value I'm going to substitute into the equation for r. And I said there was another way of solving this problem. I actually think there's an easier way of solving this problem. So what I'm going to do is just take all that information, and I'm actually going to take all of this information and just slide it down the screen here. So here we go. Perfect. And slide that on down. And now the way I like to look at this problem to make it a little bit easier is I'm actually going to start with 1 here. I think it's going to be easiest to start with 1 and work backwards, or to the left, and then work to the right from there. So right now 1 has a decimal hiding right here after the 1. And I've just really got to ask myself, if I move to the number before it, in what direction and how many spaces did I move that decimal to get to this number, 1/10? Well, I had to move the decimal 1 space to the left to make it look like this number over here to the left. So if I move the decimal 1 space to the left, mathematically what I'm doing is I'm dividing by 10. I'm dividing by 10 here. And now I want to look at 1/10 and ask myself, well, how did I get from 1/10 to 1/100th? Well, again, I have to move that decimal 1 space to the left to get to 1/100th. So again, mathematically what I'm doing is dividing by 10 here, and also the decimal's hiding here after the 0, and I said the first one, this is probably the last number in the sequence. So how did I get from 10 to 1? Well, again, I had to move that decimal to the left, 1 unit to the left. So again, mathematically, I'm dividing by 10. So dividing by 10, division of 10 here, which again gives me my common ratio of 10. So now I'm going to substitute values in to this equation. So a sub n, I'm looking for the 10th term. So a sub 10 is equal to, well, a sub 1, the value is 1/100th, and I'm not going to write it as a decimal. I'm actually going to write that as a fraction. So let's refix that. So 1/100th here, and I'm going to wrap that in parentheses. So wrap that in parentheses times r, and r is 10 in this case. So times 10 times 10, wrap that in parentheses, raised to the power of n, which is 10, raised to the power of 10 minus 1. Okay, a lot of 10s here, a lot of zeros here, but I think that's going to make our math a lot easier. So the next step, what I want to do is just clean this information up just a tad. All right, so I have a sub 10 is equal to 1/100th times 10. In fact, let's just fix that parenthesis real quick. Times 10 raised to the power of 9. So times 10 to the 9th power. And I need to close off those parentheses here. So times 10 to the 9th power. Boy, oh boy, I'm having a little bit of trouble here. But times 10 to the 9th power. And let's go ahead and change colors again. And before I do, I'm just seeing here, I'm going to need a little bit more room than I've used in the past. So I'm going to slide this information over just to help me out. So now I have a sub 10. A sub 10 is equal to, well, 1/100th, and 10, well, times 10 to the 9th power, or raised to the 9th power, is going to be a 1 with 9 zeros following. So I'm hoping that I don't run out of room here. So I'm going to put 1 0 down followed by 9, or 1 1 down followed by 9 zeros. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 zeros, and I'm going to fix that last zero there. All right, so there we go, and I'm just going to put commas in place. So really what I'm looking at is 1 billion. So I have 1 billion, 1/10 times 1 billion. And I can actually think of 1 billion as a fraction written as 1 billion over 1. So now I have 1 billion over 1, and I do want to fix that 1 also. And I'm just going to wrap that in parentheses. So now I have 1/100th times 1 billion over 1, or simply just 1 billion. Okay, so now the next thing I could do is actually multiply straight across on top and straight across on bottom. But before I do, I'm just going to clean this information up just a tad. I'm going to change colors. And since I have 100 in the denominator and 1 billion in the numerator here, what I'm going to do is just cross off the remaining zeros. I'm going to just cross simplify there. And now I can multiply straight across on top and straight across on bottom. And I'm left with a sub 10. A sub 10 is equal to, well, 1 times, now I have 1 followed by 7 zeros. Well, that's going to give me 10 million. So I have so 1 times 10 million is simply 10 million. So 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3 more. Okay, so now 10 million over, well, 1 times 1 is simply 1. So I have 10 million over 1, or simply the 10th term, or the value in the 10th term, is going to be 10 million. And I'm going to box that information up. Cool stuff. I'll see you in another video.